So they really wanted this DJ insurance thing. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. I call fucking like Geico. Like, I don't have it. And so I just remember writing that sentence. Michelle Obama didn't need it. It was like the only mic drop I forgot. And it was
Welcome to Live Rich, Have Fun, Save the World, a podcast focused on reimagining how we define success. Co-hosted by myself, Monte Bernard, and the CEO of Expensify, David Barrett. So today on the show, we have DJ Mick, an A-list DJ and entrepreneur. He's collaborated with the likes of Kanye West, LeBron James, and Will Smith. He'll be teaching a class later this summer on your personal brand meeting your passion via brightlive.com. In this episode, we discuss diversifying creativity, fatherhood, and redeveloping what work means. COVID is everything everyone's always talking about. I know you're probably sick of talking about it. I'm sick of talking about it and living through it, obviously, as we all are. As a DJ, as an entrepreneur, as someone who has their irons in a lot of different fires, how are you changing your business, changing your scope, changing your approach to day-to-day life with this, man?
Oh, wow. Every possible way. There's no right or wrong answer to it. Like, in some days, it feels like I have all the right answers. And some days, I know I have all the wrong answers, which is also like a mind state and a mind shift thing. Live entertainment was a huge portion of what it is that I offer the world. And that's been on hold now for almost a year, which is a wild thing, right? But it's a fun way to like reinvent. You know, virtual entertainment has been pretty fun during this process. I've enjoyed connecting with fans in a new way. You know, maybe you don't connect with different fans, or maybe you don't connect with fans where you're actually getting a kinetic version of what they're doing in front of you. Actually, I've changed how I DJ my live sets. I'm actually literally talking almost the entire way through the entire set and engaging with the comments and people coming in and out of the rooms. And you know, as you said, you were a performer as well. You can't really do that song in a performance in a live venue. I mean, you can, but that'd be really fucking weird. I've gotten to the point now where you can do it between the songs, but you don't really do it in the song. And if I see two people in my chat commenting about a song and making a cool suggestion, like I'll shout them out, change the song. I make it a really interactive experience because that helps me as well with my creativity. When I'm DJing, I either try to play music for me or I try to play music for the audience. And I try to, obviously, depending on where I'm at, if people are coming to see me do me, then I play 80% me, 20% them, because the synergy of where it's pretty aligned. If I'm doing a branded event, it's usually like 80% them channeled through 20% of my vision to give you my version of what it is that you want. When I'm standing in my kitchen, like I love my kitchen, it's a pretty kitchen, but it gets really boring DJing in there.
Yeah.
I had to find some other unique ways to connect with people. You can't look across the room and see people. And the two things that I've leaned into were I only play music I love. I'm not playing any shit that doesn't make my heart and my brain happy.
Yeah.
During this, you know, I mean, a couple of times I had a couple of sponsored happy hours for like brands that I'm really like proud of. And it's just like, David, it's a really bad song, but like I'm happy to it. Yeah. But when I'm playing for my own volition, I'm only playing stuff that makes me feel artistically credible.
Okay. Money
is not an issue for this. It's strictly about the art at this point. It's kind of like back to basics mentality. And the other aspect of it is let's not only make this more interesting for me by engaging with the audience in a way I've never engaged with them before, but let's give them an experience they never had. DJs hate requests. Fans are never supposed to tell any performer what to do. I have these people trained where we're having a literal musical conversation. I've been on playing songs where someone referenced a sample of a song that I didn't even know that was a sample, and I'm DJing and I look it up on who sampled well on DJing. And I'm like, holy fuck, they're right. Go on iTunes, but you still got to buy MP3s on iTunes. Yeah. Stream DJing it, which is so weird going onto iTunes in 2021. And hitting the sample, dropping it in while they're still talking about the sample in the chat. And the whole thing happened because of the communication between people who love music. And that's what I really like. And I'm trying to figure out when the world does come back, which is sooner than later now, finally. How do I keep a little bit of that magic in IRL, if you will?
Interesting. Yeah, that adds a whole other fold of the dynamic. You're right. Whereas, you know, the banter in between songs was just that. It was banter, right? You would say stuff, you would get the crowd going. I don't know. I'd tell them we got merch in the back and shit like that. You know, hey, we need a place to crash, you know, or like just get them involved and keep on that level. But when it becomes an actual facet of the performance, and that's killer, man, when you're finding the actual sample and creating and being able to take that and see it from a different perspective and have that interaction, that is a totally different level. And I am really curious to see as DJs and then other bands are doing these live streams and incorporating that into their portfolio, so to speak. It is going to be really interesting to see what kind of weird virtual reality meets IRL matrix music in the interaction experience that we're going to find in 2021 and beyond. Fauci said July or fall. But I mean, I know you must have plenty of homies as well that maybe are falling on harder times, that aren't able to really kind of shake up their approach and are really struggling with that. I know I do for sure.
One thing I've always been involved with DJing is I've always managed my own career. This is kind of how I met you guys in the first place. Is I've always been more of an entrepreneur who happens to DJ versus a DJ who wants to do other things. So I've always focused my career in that regard. And because of that, that gave me a bunch of other skills and relationships that I was able to lean on and figure out, especially during this process. And I've been figuring out for a long time, but, sped it up a little bit during this process. Obviously, I've done a lot of angel investing over the years, which has been very nice. And it's very nice to potentially get a win, also just expand your network, help others, learn from them. It's just all wins, really.
Yeah.
Even if you lose, you're actually still winning. That's been a really interesting blessing. I'm actually in the process now of starting up like a brand advisory company, which is going to be launching sooner than later. I'm not sure when this is going to air, but it'll be out like it's a fucking mixtape, right? Mm-hmm. It'll be real before March, which will be really fun. And it's going to be named after my son's middle name, because everything I do revolves around my son, as you just saw before we started taping, right? Like my whole life revolves around that young man. And so I feel like naming an advisory company after him kind of makes it a North Star for me in a lot of ways. Work really hard, not fuck it up. And
there you
potentially leave him a little something with his name on it, or at least his middle name. And worst case, it fails and he has a domain with his middle name that he could do something else with some other thing. So it's all wins.
Nice, man. Nice. I was watching some of your talks, a couple of your different things you have online, and I really liked your concept of creating a brand that's an epicenter of your passions and really finding where those things coalesce, where they cross paths. People are doing a lot of different stuff and having that fire lit under their ass from COVID. I love that key takeaway, that phrase, an epicenter of your passions. That's why I started this podcast with our CEO. I'm a musician. I was a podcaster before this. I moved over, started working at the lovely startup known as Expensify, and thought, you know what Expensify needs? A podcast. So trying to work that in, but that really spoke to me. And as starting a brand company, hopefully a brand consultation firm, as you mentioned, hopefully that, again, dovetails in with things coming back online. You can really take that and run with it, man.
It's all the things I'm really good at rolled into one. And I do every single day a call with somebody for something to help somebody with something, or network or thoughts or coffee or whatever it is. And yeah, so like, cool. You can have access to my brain all you want, but pay me just a little so my kid can have a good 13 more years until he's 18, right? That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Nice. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the stuff in your storied career. I got to ask about DJing Michelle Obama's party, man. Was she drinking white wine, requesting Journey, or was she?
No, not at all, man. It wasn't even a party. It was an event. It's so crazy now, especially if you look back at the last 4 years and even the last month.
Yeah.
Like how crazy should have gotten in the same sphere.
Mm-hmm.
But she had an organization 4 years ago, or for a lot longer than 4 years ago, to encourage kids to be healthy and eat healthy and be fit, be their best versions of themselves. Unlike Melania's thing, which was called Be Best, which isn't even grammatically correct. So I don't even know what that is. I thought it was a joke. It's really called like Be Best. And she has like a logo, but it's like her version of Space Force. Like they both started things that just should not have been started, like Space Force and then Be Best. They're both memes of themselves.
Yeah,
it's just like so fucking weird. But I still don't even think Space Force is real.
I don't know, who are we fighting against? Are we going to fight the Russians in space? Sounds cool for a Stallone movie in the 80s, but I don't really think it's necessary.
It's really fucking wild. But so anyway, so she had a charity event for her. I don't even remember the name of the organization at this point. It was so long ago, but not so long ago, but it had to be 4 years ago or 5 years ago because my son was already born. But it was really interesting. They said, I got a call from a friend of mine who does a lot of stuff in that space. And he said, I have an event for you. Do you want to do it? And I'm like, can you tell me some more information? And he was like, no. He's like, say yes. And I'm like, when is it? He's like, he gave me the date. And I'm like, where is it? He's like, I can't tell you.
Oh,
and then he's like, say yes. So, the expression like turn your nose into yeses. That was literally what was happening in the most basic way. So it ended up being in Norfolk, Virginia, in a gym. I want to say it was a college or maybe a high school, but I think it was a small college, but I don't remember. I was DJing and it was all these kids in the audience. And I remember other people were there. It might have been like Gabrielle Union maybe, and like one singer, maybe like Ashanti. It was some actress, like great, and some singer and me. And she finally came on the stage, and I remember playing her walk-on music, playing her walk-off music. I got to meet her after and get a obligatory picture, and it was awesome. It ended up being one of the life-changing events for me, because when you add a name like that to a client list, it gives you a lot of cachet to say other things. The best part of doing that event for her, and not like she would even remember the event nor me, but I did it, and I have a picture to prove I did it.
There you go.
I don't think the money was a lot. Aside from the symbolic and obviously like holistic reasons you'd want to do that event for every possible reason, the best part was whenever anybody would ask me to do some procedural involving any DJ gig ever that was just really fucking stupid, I would just be like, Michelle Obama didn't ask for that. And then people would just shut the fuck up. And it was awesome. So I remember one time I had this big corporate event. I forget who it was for. It was like for some tech company. They was like, do you have DJ insurance? And I was just like, I don't know what the fuck DJ insurance is, you know? It was some girl that didn't, like, she just must have just started. She had this whole book of vendors. And I was like, I'm not really like a vendor. I'm not like the guys bringing in food trays for the, there's not like, I don't need to use like the service elevator. And like all those people have like union insurance. It's like a different, It's a different part of the world on that side of live events. There's the back of house people, and they have to have all these unionized things, and you can't touch things. It's that world.
Yeah.
That's not my world. And it's like, the talent though, but she didn't know that. So they really wanted this DJ insurance thing. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. I call fucking like Geico. Like I don't have it. And so I just remember writing that sentence. Michelle Obama didn't need it. It was like the only mic drop I ever got in my entire life.
That'll get you into some doors, man. Michelle Obama was cool with it.
Yeah. I did the gig, and I didn't have to give them DJ insurance. And then since that day, I've never heard of DJ insurance.
Although for your new endeavor come in March, I don't know, man, DJ insurance could be in that portfolio of services you offer.
Oh, I fucking hope not.
When you do live DJing, I imagine you work with companies like Live Nation, with companies that are more on the larger scale. Do you still do independent stuff off the side? What's your relationship with that, if any?
I mean, I do everything, man. For me, it doesn't really matter. It's like, you know, do people have money? Do I like them? Do they like me? Will it be fun? Will it advance my career? Will it make people happy? You could go at it a million different ways.
Yeah.
That's how I tend to do it. If it's less fun, but more money, sure. If it's a lot of fun and they have very little budget, we could still discuss it, because I'm an artist at the beginning before everything else. And I love doing new things too. I'll take a flyer on something, if it's somewhere I've never been or somewhere I always wanted to go. I'm a real big people person. I just like working with dope people and people that I like and people that are normal. And as most people who have worked with me will tell you, most of my clients become real life friends.
Word.
And people that when they're in Brooklyn, they come over my house pre-COVID and vice versa. And it just becomes more of a community. And that's how I choose to do my business.
That's what's
so
up.
Yeah, I work with everyone. I have no qualms.
So I would definitely be eager to hear, how do you think the arts should be supported, not just in this COVID times, but like in this post-COVID, post-Trump era? Like, what do we need to do?
The first thing we need to do is get the world back open so live entertainers could start performing again in their normal environments at their normal rates. That's the first and foremost thing. And I thought it was really interesting and somewhat disappointing, though, you know, most people are just ignorant of the realities of it. I saw a lot more stuff for Save Our Restaurants or Save Our Symphony. We saved things that are more traditional, but there wasn't nearly that sort of momentum for saving live entertainment as it related to bands and DJs. You know, I was obviously pretty upset about that, simply because I've seen trillions of people enjoy live music with my genre of what I do over the course of my lifetime. And it's just like, yeah, I fully believe we need to save the local coffee shop, and we need to save the local deli and the local fish restaurant and all that. Of course we do. But we also need to save some of these live venues where people perform at. We need to save some of the larger venues that bigger shows come through, because it's not just the DJs. It's the guy that cleans the bathroom. It's the ticket person at the front door. It's the security that these venues have employed for 20, 30 years. You heard it a lot with the NBA teams when they were trying to figure out what they're going to do during the pandemic. We don't just have to figure out how to pay the players. We have to figure out about like the concession people and the security guards and the ushers and all that. And I think that's very important. It gets lost in the romance of, let's order some fancy fucking caviar app shit to our house, keep this restaurant open. Yeah. That's great, but there's a lot of other people that also need that as well. And I think that kind of got a little bit swept under the rug. Another way of answering your question would be, it would drive me nuts, and it still does to this day as we're not out of the woods yet with this pandemic, when I just see people not following scientific protocol to get the world back, whether that's our government or it's just the people we see walking on the street without a mask. Or now it's all the anti-vaccine people who are just like freaking out left and right with no scientific proof, whether they're extremists or not. Every time somebody literally works down the street without a mask and infects somebody else, and every time somebody just watches some Fox News bullshit and something else happens, it sets them back 3 months. And that keeps happening and happening.
Mm-hmm.
There was a point where honestly, I was really psychologically fucked by it, because I was literally like, damn, how am I going to support my kid during this pandemic with all this going on? And when I see anything ignorant that was setting the pandemic back 1 second or 1 minute or 1 hour or 1 day, I would literally project my whole life on that person. Every time 100 or 1,000 people do that exact act, we're probably 1 day more from the world opening back up again. And every day the world doesn't open back up again is a day that myself and musicians like you and all sorts of other people can't do what we need to do to support our families. It's a really weird thing. I don't think people really think about the consequence of their action.
Yeah, I like how you connected the daily act of wearing a mask or getting a vaccine or whatever it is like that's necessary to reopen our stages, like to get people back to work. And I think that you're right. This connection between the real world consequences of these decisions is lost, especially in the past year where it's like, oh, it's my freedom or whatever it is. And it's like, it is your freedom. You're right. You can choose to fuck over these other people if you want to. And that's what you're deciding. And I think that's a bad choice.
Yeah. Being free to be an asshole is not any better than not being free.
Yeah.
You're still being an asshole at the end of the day. And to your point, Mick, like the one-to-many approach is obviously there are more people working in restaurants than there are active live touring musicians, DJs, entertainers. There's definitely more, and you see that effect. But then on the inverse side, it's hard to quantify, I think, from the government level, what kind of impact live music has on people's just well-being, on their happiness, on it being a part of our culture. Saying like, oh, there are a small percentage of people out there that are being fucked over by the pandemic because they can't play shows, they can't work their shows, they can't produce shows, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's really hard to quantify that. And when it comes down to it, I mean, the government just works in dimes and dollars, but it's great that acts like Save Our Stages and other endeavors and other grassroots movements have really been showing that, hey, this is something that's part of the fabric of our culture, part of the fabric of who we are as a country, as a people, and it does need to be protected. Just because you can't quantify exactly how much money is it pumping into the economy doesn't mean it's not worth more than just a dam. Hopefully we're changing the tide, the chapter's turning, and we're going to be able to see that in the next year. The support will be there. Hopefully we can't just rely on everyday fans. We got to rely, unfortunately, on our lovely, lovely government. So again, hopefully the things will start to look better. But yeah, man.
I tell you, they're going to take all that Space Force money and it's a DJs and rock stars, bro. That's what's going to happen.
I want to see that Space Force money come into the light show next time I see you come to town.
It's going to be magical.
Yeah. I want to see DJ Mick at the Moda Center with the Space Force Be Best level funding of light and audio.
Absolutely. We're going to do all of that.
So actually, going backwards a bit, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts when like the pandemic is happening, shutting down, like your father, and you're like, fuck, how am I going to support my family for the next indefinite future while my entire industry is shut down? It sounds like it was pretty stressful. How did you grapple with that?
It's still stressful to this day, to be honest with you, in every way. Economically, like how do I reconfigure the deck? How do I put this puzzle together in a different way to really make it work? And thankfully, I've been able to kind of figure that out. It could absolutely go much better, but it could also absolutely go much worse. And I'm grateful. And one thing I was saying earlier was I've had a 5-year plan that I every year move forward 1 year, and instead it's been a 5-year plan, and now it's this year's plan. And it's kind of cool. It's like that whole turn coal into a diamond mentality. And when you have to do it, you have to do it. And I'm fortunate that I've laid enough groundwork for other things I'm working on to really start to actualize them. I think the return on them is going to happen this year and next year. They didn't have, it wasn't like the virus hit and I was just able to press a button, but it definitely, got my ass in gear a little bit to move things forward. I do think that's going to be really interesting for the next 4 decades of my life, but it definitely didn't make 2020 any easier in that regard. The other thing is really just with schools shut down and everything else too. It's never been more important for me to rediscover and redevelop how I work, but I'm also now doing it with, I have my kid half the week, but when I have him here half the week, he's a full-time roommate, meaning he's not going out with his friends. He's not going to school. There's not a nanny. There's not a babysitter. It's just me and him. So how do I continue to expand and develop and do all the things I need to do while being a full-time, I'm a full-time dad, even when my kid's with his mom. I'm still highly present in his life on those days too, whether it's FaceTime or financially. Like I 100% support my kid financially, even on the days I don't have him. So I'm absolutely a full-time dad in every way. But for me, it's just like, how do you find ways to work while you're still giving him the quality time he needs. And then what I found was it actually rejuvenated me in a lot of ways, because it taught me to like, let some things that don't matter go, enjoy some of the small things. Like right now as I'm looking at you guys, I have a Nest Cam up with him. I'm watching him upstairs, like eating his lunch. Having that little thing in front of you all the time, even when you're working, it just pushes you to go. Most people in corporate America, they have a boss that sits in a corner or the corner office and looks out their window. Like I have a boss looking at me through either in front of me or through a Nest Cam. And he's saying the same thing. It's motherfucker, don't fuck this up. And I'm like, if you really say that, you're grounded, bro. So it's cool. It's a built-in motivational compass.
I've also noticed in the last year, you've been investing a little bit into your podcast. I've been checking that out, and that's some sick shit, man. You got some pretty heavy hitters on there. I want to talk about your podcast, why you started that, where you want to go with it, what you see there.
Well, it's something I've been meaning to do for a long time, and I didn't have the time really to do it because of traveling and things of that nature. But with everything slowed down, I had a little bit of time. And I had invested early on in Anchor, which got bought by Spotify to run their Spotify podcast department. And those guys for years have been like, what are you doing, man? Do a podcast. Like, we're right here. You white glove this whole thing.
Right there.
One day I'm going to do it. It's like Anchor and Expensify right next to each other on my phone. I got to test one of them. Right? And we finally, you like how I did that?
Yeah.
We finally did it. And I partnered with Maxim magazine to present it, which is a really nice media boost for the show. We've got some really great guests. I'm very fortunate for that. And yes, season 1 is done and we're recording season 2 right now. And what I really try to focus on, honestly, is people who do things like me, but in all different industries. I, to me, am a very multi-hyphenated person. I try to be an official card-carrying member of a bunch of different things and try to do most of them, if not all of them. And it's a struggle, but I do enough of them well to make it all work. And I think that most people today, especially post-pandemic, are trying to create multiple different side hustles or just opportunities for themselves off the beaten path of what the traditional thing is. I like talking to a celebrity chef who's doing other stuff too. I like talking to DJs that are doing other things as well. I like talking to actors that have different things going on. Everybody has either different things going on besides their main thing, or they had different things they did originally that informed how they now do their main thing. I like that diversity of train of thought of what it is that people do.
It's pretty interesting. So I think inside the company, we really talk a lot about specialization versus generalism. And I think in my experience throughout the career, I think like a really good generalist is better at everything than a really good specialist is at anything. Because I think that most people specialize, they tell themselves they specialize to learn more about a particular thing. But in reality, I think people specialize to justify learning less about everything else. So I like this concept you have is COVID has forced a degree of journalism and side hustles just to make things happen. And the people who are diversifying their skill sets are those that are going to come through better.
I have 2 comments on that. One being, when I was in school, I went to school and got a marketing degree. I went back to school, I got an MBA. And my whole philosophy throughout that entire process was give me the B's and give me some real life shit too, versus give me the A's and I'm going to sit in a study hall all day, like just studying. I realized early on as a freshman, I had a college radio show that went till 6 a.m. And then I started doing off-campus parties. And then I ended up DJing for a bunch of like rap groups in Ohio where I grew up. And, it kept me out of the dorm several hours a day. I started a hip hop newspaper. All of these things took way too much of my time. Getting straight A's was not possible. Getting B's was possible. I was smart enough to be able to pull B's while doing these other things. But I got 2 college experiences in one. I got real world college and I got academic college at the exact same time. And the same thing happened when I was in grad school as well. I guess you would say I was a generalist at college.
That's cool.
And you put it together, but you got to still do things at a high level. Like you can't get an F in college or a D in college and expect that to work. And you can't put an F or a D or even a C- level in your passions and expect that to work. You come out the gate with a strong 85 to 87, you're going to hit some of your goals for sure in everything that you do. The other thing that it's like a really big pet peeve of mine, and I talk about this a lot when I do speeches or workshops or talk to people. I hate how companies, and obviously you guys don't do this, but I know a lot of companies nowadays aren't doing this, but historically a lot did, and there are still a lot that do this now. They segment the creatives from the other workers. And I just think as a person who understands business, but has never had to work within a restricted business structure within an office or within a building or something like that, which I'm proud of so far, but we'll see where the world goes. I've always felt that it had to be very, especially as now as everybody has all these ideas and everyone's called on for their suggestions and their thoughts, and know that if you're the accounting guy and you have to sit on the shitty floor with the shitty windows, and you're sitting in a shitty cubicle, but the guys above you are the graphic design guys, and they have all the open air desks and the beautiful windows and the foosball table and the kombucha tap. And what does that say as far as how we value your creativity and how we value your input and how we value your thought process beyond your one finite skill that we hired you for? I'm treated like I only have one skill and my skill doesn't involve any sort of inspiration or aspiration, then why the fuck would I give you more than that? But if I'm told that I can be just as creative and I am just as creative as all these other people, I just use my creativity differently. I think those people are able to give their employers and give their work teammates such a different, better, more impactful version of themselves. And so I really think that people need to embrace their inner creative, regardless of whether or not your LinkedIn description says your job title is creative at all, because we live in a world now where you have to be able to innovate no matter what it is that you do.
Yeah, I think the idea, in fact, of labeling a job as creative or non-creative, I think is kind of an anachronism anymore. I think for the best companies, I think they recognize that everyone there is doing an innovative, creative role in a different facet of it. And I think the best creativity, creativity, I think, is proportional not just to the number of minds, the number of neurons, but the number of connections between those neurons. And so I think that if you have 10 people, but they're all sitting at different desks and don't collaborate, you are not getting the same level of collaboration of 10 people applying their creativity to a single problem. But maintaining that sort of open conversation between the accountants, the designers, the engineers, or whatever it is, it requires a real commitment to inclusion. And I'd be actually very curious for your thoughts on this in terms of how have you found it easiest or best to collaborate with traditional non-creatives? Because I find it's very hard to have an aesthetic conversation that's purely subjective, where it's just that looks good or bad, or I don't really know. I don't feel qualified to share an aesthetic opinion. But our approach towards that is okay, whatever you want to do, define what problem you're trying to discuss. Because even if it's an aesthetic problem, at least I have some way to grapple with this conversation, as opposed to just I like it or don't like it.
I think it's a matter of finding common ground with the person. First of all, especially in your situation, you're obviously hiring people that are more intuitive or better than you at certain things to do the things you can't do, or you would have just done that as well. And so it's a matter of trusting that the people that you hired are excellent at what it is that they do. And then secondly, that they have the communication skills to distill it to you. Because I think when you reach a real proficiency at whatever it is that you do, you should be able to simplify it for the people that don't do it. The biggest compliment I get in my DJ sets are you make it look so easy. And for me, I actually love in general when people think DJing is, I could do that. And that's easy. I could just up there pressing a couple buttons. I have Spotify. I could do that. And that used to piss me off for a really long time. But now I realize it's just because we make it look easy because we put in our Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, or in my case, probably significantly more at this point. And that is very true. So I would rather be able to make what I do look easy and then try to explain it in that way versus I don't want to explain the technical aspects of what I do. I could tell you what I do. I tell people I do two things. I make people happy and I make people move. That's what I do. That's as a DJ. That's how I define DJing. I make you happy. Additionally, it can make you move. And those two things actually don't even have to be happening at the same time. I love doing events where people don't dance. I love doing events where I'm just setting a vibe and setting an ambiance and setting something like that, because that to me is even harder. If you can impact a room of people creatively or artistically without a dance floor, they still need liquor. Liquor probably still. But that to me is even harder. But again, we make it look easy. In a corporate structure, it's first of all, it's having some empathy too for the people who make it look easy. Oh, I'm up here building 29-page documents of spreadsheets, and that guy's just down there, his headphones on, creating emojis all day for the company. That's not easy. That's a real thing. And so you have to have the respect for what everybody does and then find those common things to understand that language. And the companies that really excel at creating that communication are the ones that I think really win.
I can agree with that 100%. Cultivating a skill, whether it be DJing, whether it be any skill under the sun, whether it be valuable in a corporate setting or something that you just enjoy and you find that passion in, a large part of cultivating that skill that gets overlooked is being able to communicate what you're doing in a way that people can understand it without having to master it themselves. And thereby they find the value in that. Unfortunately, we had to fire John, our emoji guy. He was just really not pulling his weight.
Too many headphones, yeah.
Too many headphones. The guy they were tired. They weren't innovative. Yeah, it's so long.
People that use Windows computers, man.
yeah, exactly.
You gotta just, when I would take a meeting with somebody for a DJ gig and I would sit there and it would be like, they'd have like the really bad office with the Windows computer and like some other weird stuff going on, and like bad bottled water, like Dasani or something like that. This gig is gonna fucking suck. Like
you could read the room.
If this is my point of contact for this gig, like, oh God, I'm like totally in for it. But
what you said about trying to, like, you make it look easy, but you can also explain it to your client. So in that, you're talking to Joe, the Windows 95 guy with Clippy loud and proud on his desktop. And so like, how do you get through to that guy? How do you figure out, like, he's hiring you, and how do you get to a point where like, this is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to do it.
You hope first and foremost that they're hiring you because they want you in the first place and that your reputation precedes you. So you have a little bit of clout and skin in the game before you even start. Secondly, it's like any other conversation you have with a human on earth. You just try to find some sort of common ground with them. I've done everything I can from a communication standpoint to create some sort of rapport with people, like pictures of kids on their desks, some stupid fucking trophy from their bowling shit in 1960 behind them. Like you name it. If I could find some way to create some goodwill with you, I will. For me, the thing I actually do, that's the easiest thing to do, and most DJs don't do it, but I do, is I ask them, what's your favorite song? This is like more so at the event too. If someone's being like a dick to me, that has like the ability to affect my paycheck. If you're being a dick and you're just being a dick to be a dick, I'll just ignore you.
Yeah.
But if you're being a dick in the confines of you could affect my relationship with the client or the brand or whatever, for me, the greatest thing I'll do is give them a cheers with my whatever glass of red wine I'm drinking that night and ask them, what do you like to hear? Who are your favorite artists? How can I make your night better? Most DJs, 99.9% of DJs are never going to ask somebody that unless it's the person writing the check. For me, I enjoy the creativeness of trying to like figure out how to incorporate that. I don't say necessarily what's your favorite song. I say, what type of music do you like? Or who are your favorite artists? So that gives me a little bit more leeway to pull back and try to find something to shut them up. It keeps my brain going, keeps me in it because I could easily zone out because I've done so many things. And then it makes them happy. You never know who that person is or who that person knows. And they could either make at minimum your night goes better, at maximum you gain some new clients. So it's a great strategy. And it's a degree of difficulty. It's Kobe or Jordan shooting with their eyes closed or something like that. It gives you a little bit of a...
Yeah, everyone's got a key. Everyone, especially with music, and that's in my experience. Everyone's got some key, some way to get into that subconscious, whether they know it or not. That'll open them up. And there's a lot of beautiful things you can say about music of all genres, but everybody has a key. That's a universal thing we can all connect with at a human level. Is that what's your style? What's your favorite song? What kind of vibe are you looking for? Whether it be the amount of alcohol they have flowing through their system, the type of event it is, the type of day that they had. There is that unspoken variable of music that whatever it is for that person, there is a key out there. It's just a matter of finding it. And it sounds like you've definitely nailed that down.
Yeah, I look at DJing and I see a huge similarity between my marketing background and my ability to DJ for an audience. I think DJing is the world's biggest fucking consumer behavior exercise. My job is to make you do what I want you to do. And I can do that a million different ways, depending on how I feel that day. When you guys launched your company or you create new variations of the app, you have to get it to as many different people as you can from all cultures, all walks of life, all ages. And you want to try to make them all speak the same language, which is the language and the DNA of Expensify. And that's the same thing when I'm DJing on the dance floor. There's somebody that's 20 and there's somebody that's 40. And there's somebody that's white and somebody that's black, and there's women and there's men, and there's really drunk people and there's people that haven't had a drink yet. And I'm like, how can I talk to all of you at the same time? What's the little thing I could do for this? What's the thing I could do for this? How can I activate all these audiences at the same time without anybody knowing that I'm doing that? And then find something to bring everybody together. And that's ultimately what happens at the end of the night when everybody's on the dance floor together, which is the same thing as creating an audience for your product or your company or your app or whatever it is. Like, you need to just identify all these different variations of people and find a way to bring them into your world and be a believer in what it is that you're doing, and also do it all together. You could also look at this from a human resources standpoint, as far as in a business way too. These are the things I like to talk about when I do my speaking things. I think DJing gives you that ability intuitively to do that. And I, thoroughly enjoy that aspect of what I do. For me, DJing is a very cerebral game.
Yeah, that's interesting to use the term sort of activate. I never really thought about the goal or like metric of success of a DJ. It's like, if the goal is to have everyone dance floor at the end of the day, but probably everyone takes a different path there. The music that gets half the crowd going or a quarter of the crowd going, but it's like, even though the rest is off, and then you shift it probably to something else. I'm reminded of this saying, when you start a meeting, you ask everyone their name, just because getting anyone to say anything at all dramatically increases the likelihood of them participating later on, even if it's easy. And so probably like, I imagine in your spot, now that you're talking about this, you play like some kind of music that's going to appeal to each subset independently. And then your goal is to get them all activated such that towards the end, you can bring them together, but you can't just go straight for probably the kill at the start.
No, yeah. And that's the whole thing too. You make another really interesting point. DJing is also very similar to the stock market in a lot of ways, in that like people want to buy a stock and want it just to go straight up forever. And if you buy enough things and you diversify enough, you'll win in the long run more than likely, but it's going to be many, many valleys and peaks and ups and downs. And I think that's the way a DJ set should go too, because what you want is those moments of impact to have actual impact. If you date the world's most beautiful girl, like at some point you get jaded to the fact that your girlfriend or your wife is so beautiful because you see her every single day. Then you go on a trip for 2 weeks and you come back and you're like, holy fuck, you're gorgeous. I totally didn't realize I'm living with this every day. Like, it's the same thing with music. The biggest mistake I see like new DJs make, and I assume this applies to stuff in all sorts of attributes of creativity, is they just come out the gate with the 22 hottest records in the world. And it's becomes basically, they think they're going like this, but what it really does is, I'm moving my hands and I know people aren't going to be able to see this video. It really becomes a flat line. Because it all blends together, and you're not really bringing the energy up. You're keeping the energy consistently the same with records that are designed to build the energy up. You're having no momentum. You're having no growth. Your curve is not growing. It's really staying the same. And so how are you going to get people to another level when you're not even showing them any difference? But if you give people 2 or 3 of those records and then you bring them down and then you hit them another one, it hits so much more impact. And the impact, it's not just a 1 + 1 is 2. It's like a 1 + 1 is 10 if you play the right record at the right time. And that's how you build a room. That's how you really build anything. I think you could probably take that mind state and apply it across many different things. But yeah, you have to bring them down so you can go up. You have to, it's just like you have to be sad so you can feel happy the next day. If you stay happy all the time, you'd be on, I don't know what drug you'd be on, but it's nothing I've ever taken. But like, you have to have balance in everything in order to feel, I'm not saying we need to make people go low, but you also have to give breaks. It's like when you're driving, you don't just get on freeway and go 75 the entire time. There are times you have to slow down just in order to speed up again. And think about that. That could be your career trajectory. That's absolutely parenting. That's absolutely marriage. It's absolutely how you create a DJ set. It's absolutely the life cycle of a startup. That is really the MO for life. I've done stuff where if it's close to the end of the night and we haven't hit that peak yet, but we're about to, and the audience is ready to go, like I'll just stop the song, stand there. They'll think something's wrong. Did the turntable. I probably even use that as an excuse once. So like, hey, like something like that. And
check.
I learned that, and then you just drop like the song of all songs, and it hits 10 times harder because of that little gap. And I learned that actually I'm a big stoic and I'm a big obstacles the way kind of mentality. And so in the back of my mind, I always have a couple songs I haven't played yet for if shit hits the fan, meaning if somebody trips on a cord back in the house and the speaker goes out, which you wouldn't think happens with the level of the shit I do, but it's happened. Or if the computer crashes and you have to stall people for 45 seconds to reboot, or God knows whatever, like the CEO gets on stage, no offense, David, and gives some
I would never.
That just ruins the part. You have to have these things in your back pocket, and it's cool because it's actually the same thing that actually happens sometimes when you're DJing live on Instagram, and they cut you off because you played a song with a copyright issue and you got to jump back on. Like, it kind of resets the room. It gives you a little bit more of a bump and a little bit more of a energy. I think a good reset is good now.
So it's interesting. While you were saying that, I was thinking about it. So public speaking is certainly a challenging art, and especially on some of the most fascinating topics of accounting, it can be tricky to keep the crowd. And so I've actually found that some of these dry, dull accounting conferences just saying like, fuck really loud makes everyone just take notice. Did that happen at this boring conference? Like, who is this guy? And I think that idea of resetting the room is a really important thing. It doesn't even matter what it is. I love this idea of faking a technical glitch in order to create that moment and that opportunity is a really clever approach.
There's a reason at every big conference anybody ever went to, there's some Jim Quick type guy at the first keynote in the morning, the first day, because you need those guys who are going to go there and get you, like how you said, everybody has to say their name. You have to have some sort of thing. Like you can't start the day with the person who like leukemia 4 times and why they're a survivor. Like, no, that's not the 9 a.m. keynote. That's the 2 p.m. post-coffee keynote. You have to start with the right thing. Yeah, I remember one time I actually gave a talk somewhere. I forget where it was. I want to say Canada. And I was supposed to give my talk, which is like creativity, branding, the whole kind of what we're talking about now. And I got stuck in traffic and it was raining and I got there late and they had to shift my slot. And they actually had me slated after somebody who was literally talking about being like a 4-time cancer survivor. I came in at the end of her speech and then they had somebody go between us. And then my speech went after that. And my speech killed because it was like the people were in a good emotional space from my speech because I don't remember what the woman talked about between us. She was awesome too. Well, context is also very important. It's the same thing with DJing. Like you can't play the most energetic song. Like if you're doing a wedding, you can't play like the mom and son dance and then play some crazy trap record. That's weird. Like it's too jarring. And I was like, God put that traffic jam there for a reason. Because if I would have come out and instead, so how many of you guys really like Biggie? And people crying in the audience, thinking about family members that they've lost and stuff like that. I would have failed. I would have completely fell flat on my face with that talk.
Huh. Well, yeah, this is really making me rethink our corporate policy of starting out every party with Skrillex.
Every time, Mick. Every time he does it.
So going back to, you mentioned COVID forced you to adapt and you're like saying this kind of cold to diamond approach. And what are some of the things that you had mulling in the back of your mind that suddenly like now it was go time? You just had to hit the button on them.
A few things. But one, like I said, was the podcast, which I'm super excited about. And we're going to eventually take a variation of the tools and techniques and tips that enabled me to have my career and kind of combine it with some of the lessons we've gleaned from the podcast. And I'd like to turn that into a book. So that's going to be really fun. I was saying a little bit earlier too, I'm actually starting a brand advisory company because I've always wanted to do that. It's going to be named after my son's middle name, which is his name's Miles, but his middle name's Xavier. So it'll be called the Xavier Co. And that's going to launch in March, where I'm able to help everybody from artists to startups with just talking through their problems, advising them on everything from maybe creative strategy to logos, to increasing their network, all the things that I've done for all the companies I've invested in over the last 5 years. I've done that for free as an investor, but now I could do it for other people as well. And that's something I'm hugely passionate about. And it's something I've been doing behind the scenes. It feels like daily, whether it's a text or a coffee meeting or now a Zoom, and very excited to get that aspect of my business up and running because I'll be able to do that from anywhere in the world, doing whatever it is that I'm doing at that time. And that's kind of like my really big focus for the spring is getting that up and running because that to me is a longevity play of something that I want to leave to my kid.
Yeah, I think that's also interesting to kind of diversifying fits in that theme of COVID forces us to diversify our skill sets and our revenue streams and all of this. And so now when the next pandemic hits, we'll be that much more better prepared.
Let's hope not. But yeah, for sure. I have so many thoughts on that they're not even appropriate for right now. So we'll skip it.
I do want to read that book, though, man. I was just thinking earlier when you were talking about tying the concept of DJing and sets and that dynamic and building that into the kind of the corporate world and what that looks like. I was just thinking, man, this guy should write a book. So I'm going to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, on this idea of the ebbs and flows and building up the momentum, I loved how you were presenting this as it exists in so many different domains. And actually you said it's like, oh yeah, this lulls and build up and then pulling back such that you can build up again. You mentioned parenting, and I'd be curious to expand on that. How do you think that affects parenting?
Yeah, I think the pandemic has almost taught us too that there is no linear curve anymore. It's just sometimes you got to just sit down. Like I allow so many things in my parenting that I never allowed previously because if not, there's just no way I'm going to get anything done. So I'm watching my kid right now play with Nintendo and Legos at 3 p.m. when he should be doing homework. I'm totally fine with that. Why? Because I get to talk to you guys and this is really great for my business. And now I'm going to go upstairs later and we're going to read 2 books. And it just shows you that parenting now is the same motto of every company that finally decided to let everybody work from home. We don't care how you get the job done as long as you get the job done. So the next day when I log in, your shit's done and I can do my job. That's how I look at parenting. I don't care when we read the book. I don't care when you do your school homework. I don't care what order we watch the tutorials in. I don't care when you play with your toys. I don't care if you want to have waffles for dinner and you want to have a hot dog for breakfast. None of that shit matters to me. As long as it all gets done in the course of the day and it fits the lifestyle of what we need to accomplish that day, I'm totally here for it. And I would not have told you that a year ago. I would have been like, no, this has to be like this. Because why? Because some dude in 1823 said waffles are for breakfast, not for dinner. And why? Because it doesn't really matter. There's nobody there checking the work. All that matters is at the end of the day, you get to the same place. And we've gotten to the same place faster, better, and having a lot more fun than we ever did traditionally. So I don't really see why, just like, again, in corporate America, like we're never going to go back to their offices, or they're going to go back more infrequently. I don't see why some of these like parenting hacks that I've evolved in over the last year or two won't stay.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant, man. And to that point, speaking to that point, internally here at Expensify, we have two rules. That one is get shit done. And the second rule is don't ruin it for anybody else. And that's pretty much how we live our lives here. That's how we measure our success in a number of ways. So we can definitely vibe with that. Mm-hmm. But moving towards the name of the podcast, the namesake, we always like to ask our guests how they perceive their living rich, having fun, and saving the world. What do those three concepts mean to you?
Well, I mean, DJs, that's what we do, right? We're the original first responders. No, I'm just kidding. It's funny. There was a lot of thing where entertainers were actually bringing people so much joy at the beginning of the pandemic, and people would post all these things about how DJs are saving the world right now during the pandemic. People neglected like your emotional health and the joy of feeling good. That's what entertainment does. It doesn't matter if you're a DJ. Like DJ's in the same boat as rewatching the whole season of Seinfeld because you have time now, or things like that, or whatever people did during the pandemic. You have to do things to build up your emotional health, especially during treacherous times. Or what does every email say? During these unprecedented times. That's like every email started with that shit. So as far as saving the world, I just think in general, the nature of what it is I do, if you zoom out on the actual technical version of saving the world, I think we're helping people feel good. And when people feel good, I'm not saying we're more important than doctors or like ambulance drivers, or I know people, iffy ambulance drivers actually. So that's not, but like I've heard some really funny ambulance stories that I can't tell you on this podcast. So I think that DJs and entertainment in general make people feel good. And I think the more that people feel good, the better the world will be. So that's our version of saving the world. As far as like living rich from a financial perspective, I have no idea. I've never hit that point, but like maybe one day. But I have realized that this pandemic has taught me nothing, that you're taught that rich is an economic distinction. And in many ways it is, right? But in many ways, rich is health, rich is time, rich is relationships. And if you have people that when you realize you can't see all the people you want to see over the last year, but there's people that you care about and care about you, that's a rich people problem, right? And when you realize that like you made it through the pandemic without getting it, and without getting COVID, or you realize that you're still alive. I'm about to be 43 and I've never had, God forbid, a health problem in my life. Like that's living rich. When I think about maybe economically, it wasn't as great this year as I'm used to, but the time that I've had, to work on other things that I've had with my son, like I've never had this much consecutive time with my son. Like, and I used to say, it's so funny. I used to actually say, man, if I was rich and I didn't have to work this hard and be on all these planes and do all that stuff, if I had the money, I would just chill with my kid. And now here it is. I literally got what I asked for. I got the opportunity to chill with my kid. And so that to me is, and I still spend a shit ton of time with my kid before this, don't get me wrong, but like every parent will tell you right now, it's 10x, it's 100x in a lot of ways. And that's really like living rich. I told my kid today, because he was like complaining about something, we went for a walk to get coffee. I was like, you're going to one day look back at your kindergarten era and be like, that time with daddy was fucking awesome, because we're never going to have a time where we can do 2 hours of Legos every night. Yeah. And we just laugh. And I'm drinking my wine. He's drinking his apple juice. We have some music on. I let him put like an actual record on the turntable. We're doing like Legos. We have basketball on. He's starting to understand sports now. This is a golden time. Yeah. And there's not $1 zillion in the world that could buy that exact moment for me. And so that to me is truly, living rich.
I love it. We'll leave it there. Next time, want to have you on for a part 2. I still want to hear that Prince and mashed potatoes story. We definitely got to dive into that next time. David, let's go grab some waffles. What do you say? Sounds
Definitely.
good.
About
Mick,
the time.
Thanks so much for joining us, man.
Can I shout out Nick real quick for connecting all of this in the first place?
100%.
Love that guy. He's the reason I have a great relationship with Specialization in the first place. Why I now get to know you guys. And he's just an awesome human. So I just want to shout him out.
Tucker, you're the man. All right, Mick, we will catch you next time. We're going to go grab some waffles and we'll talk soon, buddy. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Cheers. Live Rich, Have Fun, Save the World is brought to you by Expensify. Hosted by David Barrett and Monte Bernard. Engineered and produced by Monte Bernard. Theme song by DJ Mick. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Live Rich, Have Fun, Save the World on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you happen to be listening.